I want to talk to you about something that I see constantly happening with entrepreneurs that are higher up on the ADHD spectrum. And it's something that I had to learn the hard way myself. But first, a quick bit of context. I'm an entrepreneur and I've been in business for 10 years, and it was only 2 years ago that I realized that I have ADHD. Now, I've built this entire business around helping other entrepreneurs with ADHD brains, helping them to build businesses designed around their brains so they can operate from a space of fun, freedom, and fulfillment. Now, when AI tools like ChatGPT first came out and they first became accessible, I was all over it. I was using it for everything, multiple times a day. And over the past couple of years, now it's more accessible to us all, I've watched other ADHD entrepreneurs do exactly the same thing. And what I want to talk to you about today is how AI is actually destroying your productivity when used wrong if you are higher up on that ADHD spectrum. Yes, you heard me right. It is not helping your productivity, but destroying it. Because here's the thing, right? Most people are expecting AI to be a massive unlock for them, because I know I certainly did. But what I've found, both in my own experience and working with other ADHD entrepreneurs, is that if not used correctly, your productivity actually goes down. And it takes you way longer than you'd think to realize that that's even happening. I was nearly a year deep before I clocked that it was having a net negative effect. That was a whole year basically wasted. But as soon as I realized it, I totally adjusted how I was using it. So now it is actually working as a benefit for me. And I'll talk about how I use that in a different video. But first, let me break down what is actually happening here. So here's the first one that I noticed. About a year ago, I was building out a new offer. I had a pretty clear idea of what it is that I wanted to create, but I just needed a little bit of help fleshing out some of the finer details. So I hopped onto trusty ChatGPT to help me brainstorm this. And every single time that I did, something weird would happen. I'd throw my idea in, asking for a little bit of input, and it would come back with 5 to 10 different angles that I hadn't yet considered. And my brain, in its true obsessive ADHD fashion, would latch on to one of them. So I'd start pursuing that idea a little bit, spending time writing out, ideas and angles and ways that I could actually incorporate this. I'd start to get a little bit of certainty around that direction. And then ChatGPT would throw another idea my way. Have you thought about this structure instead? What about positioning it this way? And then my brain would immediately start spinning on that new idea. And I'd go back and forth like this for weeks. I would feel exhausted, but haven't actually produced anything. I would never get to the point of finalizing or finishing on that offer. I was just accumulating more and more variations that felt equally viable. The way I would describe it is like trying to pack a suitcase with someone throwing more and more clothes in. You feel like you can never actually get to the point where you can close it and leave. And for those of us with ADHD type brains, this can be particularly brutal because we will already struggle with this on our own. We start with one thing, we naturally expand it, we add features, we start to overcomplicate it unnecessarily. And when you sprinkle AI into the mix, that just supercharges this tendency because it never runs out of suggestions. It's like this infinite pool of ideas. But ideas is not the thing that we struggle with. Execution is what we struggle with. We have an abundance of ideas. And AI is never going to say to you, actually, that first idea that you had, that's good enough. Let's just fucking execute on that. It just keeps offering you more and more options. And the problem is, every option feels legitimate. So you end up with 15 different variations of the same offer instead of one live offer that is in the marketplace actually making you money. That is exactly what happened to me. And this is what I call scope creep. And it's probably one of the most common ways that I see AI completely destroying productivity for ADHD type brains. Now, the second one is more subtle. And this is something that I see happening with my clients all of the time. They get to a point where they know that they need to start tracking data inside their business. For a long time, they've been making decisions blind. They've been guessing as to what decision they need to make and often making decisions based on how they feel rather than tangible metrics. So they decide to build out a tracking sheet. So they hop onto ChatGPT to help them set it up. And it starts off simple enough, covering the basic metrics and giving them a nice clean structure. But then AI suggests tracking leads by source. And they think, that makes sense. Let me add that in. Then it suggests tracking content performance across all platforms. Good idea. I'll add that too. Then it suggests client LTV breakdowns. Then conversion rates at every stage, from DMs to sales calls, from sales calls to becoming a client retention, churn. And before long, they have a spreadsheet that's designed to track every single data point inside of their business. And with each suggestion, their brain's lighting up. Yes, this is exactly what I need. So they keep building, they keep adding, they keep refining. Hours go by. They spend fucking hours building this system out. The spreadsheet looks incredible. It's got formulas, it's color coded, it's got their logo on it. It looks the dog's bollocks. And then finally, midnight strikes. So they save it, they close their laptop, and they head to bed with this sense of satisfaction. Like they finally sorted out a major gap in their business. But here's what happens next. They never actually track anything. Not a single entry. Because when they open it the next day, they are overwhelmed. There's too many columns, there's too many fields, too many options, too many things to fill in. So it just sits there, perfectly built and completely unused for weeks. And this is because their brain got rewarded for building the system, not for using it and actually getting the desired results from the system. Think about scrolling through social media. Every swipe gives you something new, something interesting. You feel engaged. And maybe if it's business content, you might even feel productive, like you've learned something new. But 2 hours later, what have you actually built? Nothing. You've done fuck all. You've been sat on your sofa. And that is exactly what's happening here. Every time AI suggested a new feature or a new metric, they would go and they would build it and their brain would light up. But the problem is they weren't actually making progress towards the goal at hand, which was having data to make informed decisions inside of their business. Instead, they were just getting dopamine from the novelty that was provided by building something new. And those of us that have brains that are higher up on that ADHD spectrum, we respond so strongly to new stimulation. We can hyper-focus on building something new for hours. That is never the issue. But that mundane middle part where you actually need to go and use the system itself, that is where we always struggle. And the problem is our brains often get rewarded for exploring and building the idea out rather than using it. And the reality is we don't need encouragement to go and build more things. We need help with finishing things that we've already started. And what was happening here is that AI was giving them novelty dopamine instead of progress-driven dopamine. And although there is a huge difference between the two, they didn't even realize that it was happening. Now, the third one is where things get really interesting. And if I'm honest, I think that this is likely the most important one. I noticed pretty quickly that once I started using AI, I stopped sitting with my own ideas. I'd have a rough thought about something, and then instead of just sitting with it for 5 minutes longer to allow it to crystallize, I'd hop straight over to ChatGPT and ask it what it thought of my idea, which at the time seemed efficient and productive. I was moving with speed. I noticed something pretty quickly started to happen, and that's that every idea I had felt invalid until something external like ChatGPT validated it. I'd second guess myself constantly, as if I'd all of a sudden lost this processing power in my mind to think of my own original ideas. I'd be sat there thinking to myself, is this actually good or am I missing something? Let me just quickly ask ChatGPT. Let me see what it thinks. And the more I did it, the less confident I seemed to become about my own judgment. It's like you trying to learn how to drive and you've got someone next to you who is constantly just telling you when and where you should steer, brake, indicate, and whatnot. Now, you might get to where you're going, but you're never going to be able to develop the instinct on how to get there on your own. And here's why I believe this matters so much. Because the way that you evaluate solutions and the process that you have to undergo to solve problems is just as important as the actual solution itself. You learn a ton, and arguably the most, through the process of solving the problem. You become more knowledgeable on that pursuit. You find other ideas that you can explore that you wouldn't have otherwise. And that happens to me all the time. I have a problem that I need to solve either for myself or a client that's a little bit techie, and I go through this process of, mind mapping, brainstorming, looking at all of these non-linear ways that I can solve the problem. And as a result, I find so many other possibilities and new little rabbit holes that I can go down in the future when the time is right, that I wouldn't have been able to come across otherwise. And that is why I don't just want to outsource my thinking to AI, especially because we can assume, by the way that the language models are trained, that it is going to give me a logical and a relatively generic answer. It's going to give us the exact same answers as anyone else that was to ask it that question, which is not what I want. I don't want the solutions inside of my business to just be the same as everyone else's. I want unique solutions, counterintuitive solutions, solutions that work for my specific brain and not for someone else's brain. And the only way that I'm going to be able to get unique, counterintuitive solutions that work for my brain and make my business stand out in the marketplace, which is a non-negotiable nowadays, is by going through this process myself. Yes, you can use AI as a tool to refine or to slightly expand or to ask you Socratic questions, but not to replace your own thinking. And for those of us with these brains that are higher up on that ADHD spectrum, this is particularly dangerous because you are likely already second guessing your instincts. Maybe you've been told that your ideas are too much, you're too ambitious, they're too lofty. The way that you've imagined to do things couldn't possibly work. So when we finally go on this journey to build a business that is specifically designed around our brain, the last thing that we need is a hand over our thinking that is going to just be giving us generic answers. And this is what happens if you externalize your thinking and you outsource your thinking to AI. It is only going to weaken your sense of internal clarity. So here's a parting thought that I want you to think about. Where are you using AI as a thinking replacement rather than a thinking tool? Because I guarantee you're likely doing it somewhere. And maybe you're falling in the trap of scope creep, mistaking planning for execution, or outsourcing your thinking entirely. But whichever it is, drop a comment and let me know which one is hitting hardest for you. Because once you see it, you can actually start doing something about it.